The Mazda lineup of SUVs will provide safety, performance, and capability on your journey ahead. From the three-row Mazda CX-9 to the first-ever Mazda CX-50, our sales team is ready to guide you to the SUV for your lifestyle. Shop the Omaha Metro's exclusive Mazda dealers at Woodhouse Mazda in Bellevue or Woodhouse Place Mazda. Visit us online for your next Mazda SUV at woodhousemazda.com.
Forget about Crain.
Eric is frozen there. He did not pay his, internet bill, but we'll take over here, for the Rotoworld, RotoGrinders Pick Six podcast here. It's me, Rich Hribar. I'm joined with the big dog, Team Silverback, Gorilla, Evan Silva. What's going on with Week 8, Evan?
Man, I know that you're in the exact same boat as I am. This is like, I took a nap today. We have 6 teams on bye. I might go see a movie tomorrow. I mean, I challenged you. I was like, I might be able to beat you in terms of our article being done, but I wait on a lot of injury news, and you just run it, and then you come back and correct. But I'm probably just gonna wait until tomorrow, like early afternoon, to put it out. But it's a great week, man. And the more that I've studied the week, and I often will start the weeks off thinking that the weeks suck, but I've gotten much more into sports betting, and I like a lot of overs this week. Yeah. And we're going to talk about some of those games where we like the overs, where there have been sharp money on the overs, because those are really games that you want to attack. I think in daily fantasy. I mean, I've gone back and looked at, what are some binding characteristics between games that have produced super high fantasy scores, and one of the most common characteristics of those players, they have been in games that shot out and then went way over the total. So we will be talking about, I think, multiple games here that fit that criteria.
Yeah, and last week was one of those weeks where the slate wasn't great, but I think it was a good week that everyone had good weeks in daily fantasy because it was so concentrated. The games that we thought were going to be good did end up being good, and the players that were a little chalkier were all pretty much came and smashed, last week. Except for maybe, we saw GameScript kind of get the Cardinals and the Carson Palmer injury. I had some Adrian Peterson out there that just went up in flames immediately. But, Zeke, Dak, big monster hits. Those guys carry people. Tyrod, LaShawn McCoy, all those guys smashed. Mark Ingram smashed. But this week is a lot more open. Like you said, I think that this is a great palate cleansing week, for us that write up these long articles on every game. And there's just a lot more refreshing games on the slate than it was last week. We had a lot of low totals. 7 teams didn't even score a touchdown last week. It kind of played out as we thought it would. But, we'll jump right into one of those games that we think is going to go over. And I don't have the graphic sheet, but I'm assuming it's Raiders-Bills is the first one. And this game kind of jumps out, right away as a game that I thought was going to be a highlight spot this week. And it hasn't really gotten a lot of juice going so far earlier in the week, but I think we'll get there as it goes on. It's got that 46.5 point team over under total. The Bills just being a slight, home favorite, 2.5 points. But run this back. We had the monster Amari Cooper game last week. It finally happened. The weeks of chasing Amari finally hit, and it was in a spot that was, semi-predictable. If he was going to hit last week, it was going to be against in the slot where he played more slot snaps than he had, all season, and on that left side of the Chiefs defense. And this is another spot where it looks like he's going to be able to roll over some of that success. So, I mean, how are we feeling about that Raiders passing game, kind of rolling over those monster totals? They're definitely not going to run as many plays as they did last week, but it's still a good spot for the Oakland guys.
So I think that, rather than just looking at players from like, ooh, they get it done or ooh, they don't get it done, you have to kind of realize what kind of players these players are. And I mean, no one really talks about this more than you, Reeves. And Amari Cooper is a very volatile player, and he has been that throughout his career. And in large part, I think that is due to, and we all have our different theories, but I think that in large part that is due to the way that he has been utilized. He's been utilized as like a strict X receiver who does not, he runs down the sideline, doesn't get a lot of slot snaps. They don't really manufacture easy catches for him. He runs really difficult routes, and defenses attack him with their top cornerbacks. So that makes life very difficult on Amari Cooper. And for that reason, he has been a boom-bust player, great best ball play, and someone that frustrates you in redraft or in daily fantasy. And, he can have a great matchup, and sometimes it just won't happen. So when you like get familiar with the types of players that these players are, you can be a lot more comfortable, being able to look back at them and be like, oh, well, that makes sense. Why did that not happen in that scenario? Or oh, wow, they moved him into the slot last week and he caught 6 of his 11 receptions in the slot. And if they keep doing that, guess what? He's going to draw Leonard Johnson, who's played for, 11 different NFL teams in 6 seasons. And Amari Cooper, it's going to happen for Amari Cooper again. And multiple people this week have noted that the Raiders offense, and I think you were even on this at sometimes last year, that the Raiders offense does not have any slowdown in 1 p.m. Eastern time games across the country. They actually have very high scoring history with Derek Carr at quarterback in 1 p.m. Eastern time games across the country. And this this Bills defense, I think, is really not something that we should fear, especially in Amari Cooper's case. They got ripped by A.J. Green. They got ripped by Mike Evans. They are going to be likely missing E.J. Gaines and Jordan Poyer, 2 of their 4 starters in the secondary. So it should, again, we are familiar with what kind of player Amari Cooper is throughout his career. He's not reliable. You can't say that he's reliable, but you can say that he has monster week potential. And this is a week where it sets up nicely for him to deliver on that monster week potential.
Yeah, and I like Derek Carr on the other side as well. I mean, people are going to look at the points per game and see the Bills and what they're allowing to opposing quarterbacks and opposing passing games. I think it's a run and hide spot, especially with them on the road. But you kind of hit on it. I mean, this is a defense that's starting to suffer some injuries, and they're starting to come back to the pack a little bit. The past 2 quarterbacks they face have hung up 328 and 384 on them through the air. I think Derek Carr this game has a lot of stacking potential all around and a lot of different levels, especially, with Buffalo being a home favorite. You can get, McCoy, you can go Carr McCoy. You can always play Tyrod and McCoy together with the type of target volume, Shady's been getting and the rushing floor Tyrod's had. I still think, flipping it to the Bills side, this is another great week. I kind of find myself, as I've done lineup building, that Tyrod, I keep going back to Tyrod, and I want to go up to Wentz on a site like FanDuel, but I just can't get there. And, I always got to pinch myself on FanDuel when I'm setting, main cash lineups, is you don't always have to extend yourself to get that quarterback because the quarterback points are available elsewhere. And Tyrod's that guy that kind of just fits, rosters more often. And I like him a little bit more than a guy like Andy Dalton at the same price. And he's just a little bit more on DraftKings. Just for the simple reason, I think that this game has more back and forth potential than I think that Colts-Bengals game has, in Cincinnati. So, I mean, are you going right back to Tyrod and Shady this week after they, were a little chalky last week? You think people are going to be playing more Dalton than Tyrod?
That's a real good question. I haven't made any firm decisions yet, but that is absolutely an internal debate that I will be having throughout the week. One guy I wanted to mention is a little bit of a sleeper, and he seems a little point chasey because he went for over 100 yards last week against the Chiefs, which was his only game above 60 yards all season, is Jared Cook. And the Bills played a really, really soft tight end schedule early in the season, and then they played a tight end core that has some juice, and they got ripped apart by Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard, to a much greater extent O.J. Howard. And a lot of that was just good play calls by the Buccaneers offensive staff. I mean, putting O.J. Howard in situations where he was literally wide open. But, Jared Cook is running. I mean, Derek Carr was talking about it this week, how big of an addition Jared Cook has been to their offense. He can run wide receiver routes. He's always been an underachiever, and he's certainly not someone I would fire in cash. But in a game that we think has sneaky shootout potential, I put a small bet on the over in this game, and I'm trying to see if some smarter people like the over in general, because maybe I'll hit it harder. But Jared Cook, I think, stands out to me as a sleeper in a good matchup. Dude is 8th among tight ends in targets right now. And he's not being treated like that, by the public.
Yeah, what's funny is last week before that game, I tweeted out a chart that had tight ends. I got in a conversation with Ben Gretsch. It's a great article for RotoViz, and we were talking about how tight ends. I highlighted it's very important to talk about routes run and passing opportunity versus just snaps played for tight ends. And I tweeted a chart that had percent of routes compared to snaps and targets per routes run for tight ends. And I had a follower hit me back, said, "Man, Jared Cook, look at him, man." He's like, "I need to get Jared Cook on my roster." I kind of just shoved it off. I was like, it's Jared Cook, whatever. But he's ranking in the top 5 and like all these opportunity metrics for tight ends. And then last week he pops, and it hits big for that 100 yarders, almost hit the game-winning score. I like that. Before we move on from this game, I got to get your thought on 2 guys real fast that I think that were fringe guys last week. One is, if this is a spot we like Tyrod, are we just going to, because he's been good at home. Tyrod's 3 best games have come at home. It's another soft matchup as well with the home start. Are we just rolling him naked with Shady, or are we buying anything from the outlook of like a guy like Deontay Thompson, who only got 4 targets last week and ran 14 pass routes, but he was a guy that was with Baltimore as a backup with Tyrod when he was there, for 2 years. They lack just vertical playmakers. Zay Jones has been a travesty so far to start his career, and maybe he'll turn it around, but they need playmakers. And Jordan Matthews is still a guy. He's a wide receiver with a broken finger, so we can't count on him. And a guy like Nick O'Leary, people were on, and he turned most into his opportunities last week with 58 yards and caught some long balls. But he's got a way softer matchup against Oakland, who's allowed 5 tight end 1 scoring weeks on the season already. Are either of those like fringe punt guys you would consider at all?
I think that Tyrod is definitely the play with Shady in the same lineups again. The Raiders have gotten smashed by running backs in the passing game, number 1. Number 2, LaShawn McCoy led the team in catches last week. He also almost had a receiving score on the Bills' first drive, which, this is a game of inches. Fantasy football and real life football are both games of inches. And, if Tyrod just places it with a little bit more touch there on the goal line, we're talking about a 3-touchdown game, a game where LaShawn McCoy caught a touchdown, and LaShawn McCoy becomes a popular play along with Tyrod Taylor in lineups. So just like a couple of inches sways the common opinion. But yeah, I mean, I think you go right back to that play where they are absolutely playable together. You mentioned the narrative thing with Deontay Thompson. It does make sense. And last week, this was one of the games I was watching on Sunday. And so I was real into it. They were ripping deep balls to Deontay Thompson. I mean, it was very impressive. And then every time they would try a deep ball to Zay Jones, Zay Jones couldn't run to it. He can't go get the ball, whereas Deontay Thompson could. I think it's still kind of a fluke with Deontay Thompson. I actually would trust Nick O'Leary a little bit more. So Logan Thomas excused himself from practice today, and Sean McDermott said, "I don't know when he's going to be back." Logan Thomas played 43% of the snaps last week. He caught a 22-yard wide open touchdown against the Bucs. But if he is out, I think that elevates the outlook for Nick O'Leary a little bit more. Nick O'Leary he should be still right around the minimum, and he has gone over 50 yards and played 80+% of the snaps in back-to-back games. Not an exciting player by any means, but I think he's absolutely in play. I mean, his matchup this week is much better than what he saw last week. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, yeah, so we're going to move on there. We're going to head to a game that you kind of highlighted, which I'm excited to talk about because I think it's a great, football conversation game, but it's not a game I was really circling, on this DFS slate. So we got the Texans at the Seahawks here.
The Mazda lineup of SUVs will provide safety, performance, and capability on your journey ahead. From the three-row Mazda CX-9 to the first-ever Mazda CX-50, our sales team is ready to guide you to the SUV for your lifestyle. Shop the Omaha Metro's exclusive Mazda dealers at Woodhouse Mazda in Bellevue or Woodhouse Place Mazda. Visit us online for your next Mazda SUV at woodhousemazda.com. The Mazda lineup of SUVs will provide safety, performance, and capability on your journey ahead. From the three-row Mazda CX-9 to the first-ever Mazda CX-50, our sales team is ready to guide you to the SUV for your lifestyle. Shop the Omaha Metro's exclusive Mazda dealers at Woodhouse Mazda in Bellevue or Woodhouse Place Mazda. Visit us online for your next Mazda SUV at woodhousemazda.com.
Seahawks are the 5.5-point favorite, total sitting here at 45.5 points. And of course, everyone's going to want to know, we've just been playing, Deshaun Watson at will, and he's been winning weeks for us and just winning cash games for us and winning tournaments for us because the ceiling's been so high. But this is going to be probably like a good litmus test because when you look at all his games played, outside the Cincinnati game, it's all these defenses have been pretty trash. That's not taking away anything he's done because he's performing at such a high level. It's not just elevated by matchup. So, I mean, is this a game that you're looking at where a lot of people are just going to shrug off with it being in Seattle and the cachet stigma of the, games in Seattle and people aren't going to be on the Houston side, or is there like legit guys up here that you just think can pop?
I would rather hear your take on this game first, and then I will let you know mine.
Well, I mean, I think from the Deshaun Watson standpoint, it's going to be a week where I don't really play him in DFS, and I don't think a lot of people will. Outside of this, I will say that Seattle really hasn't been tested, on the season. They played the Packers in week 1 and then the Rams on the road are the two best offenses they faced. They still have only allowed more than 18 points once on the season. And, we go back with when Pete Carroll's record, we're not just going to shove all that aside based on the schedule because they've got a resume. It's the defense has been good and they've been good in that building, ever since Pete Carroll's been there. And rookie quarterbacks have struggled in that building since Pete Carroll's been there. Rookie quarterbacks have a 1-6 record with 8 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in those 7 games. The high passing yardage that we've seen a rookie post in Seattle is 218 yards. That was by Mike Glennon. We know that also touchdown regression is inevitably going to set in at some point for Deshaun Watson. I mean, he is completing less than 60% of his passes last 2 weeks, but still on this 2007 Tom Brady-ish touchdown tear. And I think when you look at where he's getting the touchdowns from, he leads the NFL in fantasy points inside the 10-yard line. And the player that is second in fantasy points inside the 10-yard line is DeAndre Hopkins along with him. Now, just getting to the red zone has been kind of a chore against Seattle. Opposing teams have run just 26 plays from inside the red zone in Seattle, 5 plays from inside the 10 and 2 plays inside the 5. Those are all league lows. We talk about it could be some schedule-induced, there. But, I mean, this seems like a highlight spot to say, like, well, this is where the tick down's going to come. Outside of Watson, though, I think it is a spot where you can look at DeAndre Hopkins and say that the matchup is probably not as bad for him. The individual play is not as bad for him as it would appear. I mean, he runs a ton of routes, on the left side. He runs a ton of routes just basically away from Richard Sherman. So, I mean, he's going to get Shaq Griffin a lot, Jeremy Lane, those guys he's going to see. So, I mean, I'm not scared of him. Will Fuller in his 5 touchdowns at 8 catches, I kind of lump him in with Watson. Like, this is as good a spot as any for like that to just like kind of come back to where we think it'll be. But I think that a low-key underneath play based on just where running back is this is at this stage. Lamar Miller's not in a bad spot for the type of volume he's going to get. He's not a dude I would like really play in DFS because the ceiling has only really been there in one game. But Seattle has struggled against the run. We know that the Houston Texans are going to try to run the football a little bit. So, I mean, I would be happy to roll him out in a season-long league. But, I mean, I don't know if these are like the Houston guys are going to be all guys I'm going to chase the push into DFS lineups outside of Hopkins, maybe in a stack vice versa with the Seattle guys.
Yeah, so this is a great game to talk about. My argument against Lamar Miller, and I'm with you that I would probably roll him out in season long, but I would be a little worried, is that the Seahawks, I think, have fixed their run defense. Last 3 games, 3.1 yards per carry, 1 rushing TD allowed to opposing RBs. On the season, they've allowed the third fewest receiving yards in the league to running back. So that would be my one concern with Lamar Miller, but I'm with you again. He gets 15 plus touches each week, and on a week with 6 teams on bye, he's probably like a top 20 RB option at very worst. I would not try to get cute with him in daily fantasy. So this game at Bet Online, which is a pretty sharp, like non-Vegas book, they had it at 42.5 earlier in the week. It was on Monday. And I mean, I put a pretty big bet on it, and it is now at 46 at Bet Online. And the opening line, like if you look at Warren Sharp's website, it was 43 at most shops, up to 45 at worst, 46. So, I think that some smart people are looking at this game as like a game that definitely could go over. And I think that the Seahawks are in a good position to cover because I think that Deshaun Watson will look like a rookie this week, number one. And number two, I think that this Texans defense is not good. And if you guys remember, before the Texans bye, one of the reasons that people talked themselves into Kevin Hogan was because they didn't have a lot of respect for the Texans defense. The Texans defense that is missing from last year, J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless, John Simon has been great for the Colts. Quentin Demps led them in interceptions last year. A.J. Bouye is a top 10 corner in Jacksonville. Vince Wilfork retired. Brian Cushing on suspension. I mean, that's like essentially your starting lineup on defense right there. Russell Wilson, top 5 fantasy quarterback in 3 of his last 4 starts. Be with me, Reeves. I need you with me on Russell Wilson because you're very good with Russell Wilson takes. I think he smashes here. I think that this is actually a pass funnel defense right now, and I think that they're solid against the run. I mean, the Seahawks are a pass funnel offense, anyways, right? They can't run the football. So it adds up to a lot of like box score statistics, I think, for Russ. And so one thing that I have struggled with, however, is who to stack them with. The Texans have not given up any big games to slot receivers. However, Kareem Jackson is number 100 among 113 in Pro Football Focus's pass coverage cornerback grades. And the Seahawks the Texans gave up big games to Travis Kelce and Gronkowski, so that kind of bodes well for Jimmy Graham. So is it Russ naked or is it him with who? Either way, all I want to hear, Reeves, is that you like Russ this week.
Oh yeah, I love Russ. He's a trust already in the worksheet. You kind of hit upon it. Houston, I mean, they're 31st in the league in points per play allowed, and Seattle's 4th in per game offensively. This is a team that has finally realized they can't run the football, and they are starting to spread it out and just throw the football at will. And they were a team that ran about a dozen plays in a row from inside the 5 and couldn't run it in at no chance last week. I like Jimmy Graham again. I feel like a lot of people expected more, and he left a ton of points on the field last week. Oh my goodness. I had a ton of Jimmy Graham and was dying where he dropped target, in that first half of that game, but he did squeeze one late and got got where we needed, at least for value. But you touched on it. Yeah. The tight ends, the good tight ends they faced, they've gotten roasted by. And Kelce put up all his points in the first half because he left that game with concussion. and then Gronk got him. So, I mean, I like Graham. He leads the NFL in targets from inside the 5-yard line. Like I said, if they get down there, they can't run it in. With Rawls or Lacey, it doesn't matter. They're spreading it out. So, I mean, I love Russ. I like him with Graham a little more than Baldwin, but I don't even think the matchup matters really with a guy like Baldwin, and we saw it last week. He's just kind of come and gone as it goes. I mean, but the matchup was tough for him last week, and he roasted. And he had another for sure touchdown, too, that Russ missed him on, that he overthrew him on. And or else he would have like a really gigantic game.
He got his production last week straight up against DRC and Janoris.
And that's 2 weeks in a row that we saw guys get off on Janoris, because DT got him.
He really is like Antonio Brown in that he's so difficult to cover. Keenan Allen, I think, can be like this at times, but there are just a select few receivers in the league that are great route runners and have that sort of innate short area quickness that it almost doesn't even matter necessarily who is covering them. They can win and have that, that on-field quarterback pass catcher rapport that Doug Baldwin has with Russell Wilson. And sometimes that stuff is indefensible. I mean, Julian Edelman and Tom Brady were like that.
Yeah, just know if you got Russ that you're probably going to have to wait. I mean, he's a guy that is stacking all his points late in games now. He leads the league in fourth quarter scoring altogether. He's got 7 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter and 4 outside the fourth quarter all season. So, you got to wait a little bit for them to get going. But the Seahawks are a team that gets it going eventually, and they have recently here offensively. They put up some big crooked numbers. So let's move on to the second game, the third game.
Wait. I think I'm ready now.
Are you? You're
ready.
Here?
Well, I'm here in theory, okay? I'm connected.
You sound like a ghost. You're like a spirit that's with us right now.
That's actually true. I didn't want to talk about it here. You know what? I'm just going to turn on. I'm currently connected to my phone, so I'm doing I feel like I'm just doing an interview on on a local radio station or something. I got the phone propped up to my ear. I'm ready to go. I'm glad to hear you guys are on Team Russ, though, because when we set up the games for this show, I looked at this and I said, please tell me you guys are on Russ Wilson, because it's early, it's Wednesday, but man, I wanted me some Russ. Wait, what are we laughing at? I can't see if you're making funny faces at me or not.
No, I'm just glad that we're all on the same page. He was the first cash game quarterback that I put into my lineup on FanDuel, just messing around. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to play him in cash. I probably won't because he's a little expensive, but I'm so glad that we're on the same page. I mean, dude is balling right now, man. Dude
it's a hard week to pay.
When Russell Wilson gets rolling, you're going to lose money betting against him. I'll tell you that.
And I don't think he's going to be too popular, is he?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And
I think the main reason he's not going to be popular, I guess we haven't talked about the price of Andy Dalton yet. He's too cheap, but also the quarterbacks in our next game. How's that for a segue? So you guys can't do that without me, can you?
No. You heard me just botching all those transitions.
Well, it's Dallas at Washington. It's a total of 50. Dallas 2-point favorite, and we were talking about chalky quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins. Rich, both of these guys are probably going to be popular. Both of these guys should crush. I mean, this game absolutely has a lot of shootout potential.
Yeah, and that's why this is a real appealing game. And the Cowboys are kind of turning into that fun team. They still play in a boring style, but they're playing in these high scoring games now. I know the 49ers didn't cooperate on their end, but the Cowboys kept it going though. They kept trying to score points. I had a lot of Zeke last week, and I kept waiting for the gas pedal to come off, and they're throwing touchdowns at Des Bryant, up 38 points, So I was pretty happy about that. So, I mean, Dak we talk about it every week. I mean, I don't really need to keep doing it. He is the premier cash game quarterback. He's got the safest floor at the position, and he's dropping hammers this year as in terms of a ceiling. You can't go wrong with him. Kirk Cousins, we talked about it earlier. He's just like a naturally slow starter. It's kind of really happened. He's been, a QB1 in each of his past 4 games. Dallas is on over 20 points per game to opposing quarterbacks since week 1. I know last week Beathard, kind of salvaged his game with a rushing touchdown, and he was pretty awful outside of that. But this is still a defense we're not scared of, especially from a guy at the caliber of Kirk Cousins and with the offense that the Redskins have. So, I mean, these guys are locks. You're going to play those guys whenever you can. It's a fun stacking potential game. It's going to be interesting to see what you do, though, as for terms of who we stack these guys with. Because Josh Norman's probably going to play. Yeah, Josh Norman's probably going to play, and Dez is a guy that he's scoring a lot of touchdowns still, and that's what he does. I mean, he scored 14 touchdowns now over his past 17 full games played, with Dak, but the high yardage just isn't there. So I mean, can you win a tournament with Dez? It's hard. Like he's got to score multiple touchdowns.
He's got to score 2.
Yeah, he's got to score multiple touchdowns. So I mean, do you just play Dak, and then do you just play Chris Thompson? Are we chasing what happened in the third and fourth quarter of Jordan Reed? He's run the past 2 games, he's run 27 and 32 pass routes, which are the most he's run since week 1. So how much of that is real? Dallas really hasn't allowed anything to tight ends, but they really haven't played any tight ends either. If you go up and down their tight end slate, there's not really anyone there that you really expected to score points. May have chased a couple games here or there, but they really haven't played anyone good. And we've got Josh Doxson kind of sitting out here coming off of his 84% of snaps played. He didn't turn that into really any production with the 3 for 39. But in a week where it's hard to go down at running back with the teams on bye, there are not a lot of cheap running back plays. I feel like Josh Doxson is going to be that wide receiver a lot of people look to at a potential shootout to be like that value smoothing, the value opening, guy, in the wide receiver spot.
Yeah, so let's talk about Josh Doxson real quick, because Evan, this is a guy who I think anybody who was kind of prepping for DFS in the offseason, we said Josh Doxson, stash him on your bench, draft him in best ball, and now Evan, it seems like he's taken over Terrell Pryor's job basically.
Yeah, the problem here is that Terrell Pryor's job didn't really give us many fantasy points, right?
Yeah.
So I have never seen a 3-catch for 36-yard scoreless game hyped as much as Josh Doxson was on Monday night. I mean, I feel like people were taking victory laps on Josh Doxson, and he didn't even do anything. He had the one play where he stiff armed the dude, and I mean that was cool. He looks like a big stud, but he didn't actually really do anything in the game, and he only had one more target in the game than Terrell Pryor. And in the second half, he actually got out snapped by Terrell Pryor in the second half. So
do you think Doxson's fool's gold?
That's something that I'm weighing right now. He has a great matchup this week. He's in the highest total game of the week. He's getting talked up by the coaching staff. He's a starter now. He did run 40 routes last week, but he plays in this offense where they just spread the ball around. Everybody, I mean, they rotate guys. They rotate tight ends. They rotate wide receivers. They rotate running backs. Their running back's a pass catcher. Their running back leads the team in receiving on the season. So in terms of trustworthiness, Doxson for me is very, very low right now. However, I also can see the argument in favor of him. And I don't know. I mean, I have a feeling that he's going to be real popular on DK, especially because he's 3,900 and there are no good value plays on DK this week.
He will be one of the 10 highest owned guys this week.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. And you know who I also – and we talked about the Buffalo-Oakland game. We didn't even touch on this mistakenly because we didn't have our host – we didn't even talk about DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard, which for me, I don't even think is really even worth talking that much about because it's just right down the middle. And if you see anybody telling you, "Oh, this guy's the play," they're BSing you, man. They don't know.
On a full week, I would have wrote both those dudes up as voids. I think that they're both like RB2 flex plays in seasonal leagues because the matchup doesn't even set up good for the Raiders to even run the football. And they're a team like we talked about with the Redskins not being able to utilize their receivers doesn't matter for Josh Doxson because none of the receivers have done anything yet. That's kind of how I feel about the Raiders. The Raiders haven't run the football at all either. So it's like, I'm not going to be in a hurry to like elevate any of those guys in Oakland. Either. But I mean, you talk about Doxson. I think that given his price and what we think about the game, and he was the guy that was getting, even before last week, was getting end zone targets. He was still getting end zone targets. And we're trying to cheap volume that has the upside of turning into touchdown potential. Those are the kind of guys we look for. This isn't just like a slot guy getting opportunity and we're playing for like a floor receptions. There's like an actual ceiling here that possibly could exist, for the price. And said if it was just another week too, I don't know if I would try to wedge him in the lineups because I think he's going to be so popular, like Crain said. But I mean, I don't want to go down at running back because outside of like maybe taking some swings on Joe Mixon, who is a cheap play, there are not a lot of cheap running back plays out there. I need to get Zeke in my lineup. I need to get Le'Veon Bell. I need to get LaShawn McCoy. I need to get Mark Ingram in my lineups. And, if you're going to do that, we need a cheap guy. And it all like signs point to like this being the cheap guy.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and
I'm
I think a
with you,
lot
man.
of people are going to go with that construction. I think that's going to be a really popular roster construction this week.
If you had to set the over-under for just number of sheer targets in this game for Josh Doxson, what would it be?
5.5.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Okay, so I guess my question is 5.5, 3,900 over on DK. He's going to be popular. Evan, do you think he's a fade?
In tournaments, absolutely, especially if he's as high owned as you spoke. I mean, hey, if he goes,
I really do think he will be.
If he goes 3 for 36 scoreless again, you have a huge edge if he's really high owned. And I'm with you, Crain, that I think he's going to be real high owned.
Okay, so we talked about Josh Doxson, but this game should be a shootout. We talked about Kirk Cousins. Evan, my question for you is, who do we pair Kirk Cousins with?
I mean, that's very difficult, Doxson? I think you play him naked at this point. I mean, and it doesn't feel optimal. I don't like to make tournament lineups where my quarterback is just in there by himself. But you look at the target share spread out over the season. I mean, entering last season, Terrell Pryor, who got benched last week, technically, was leading the team in targets per game at 5.8. And I mean, I think it's Jordan Reed, that you would stack with Kirk Cousins, but the ball can go anywhere. I mean, Jordan Reed, even his best game of the season last week, Vernon Davis had more yards than him, so they just have a lot of weapons, man. I mean, they're a spread offense. They have this pass catching RB, and I think you play him naked. I think that you play Dak with Zeke or naked this particular week. Last week I would have said with Dez and or Zeke. With this particular week, I think it's Dak naked or with Zeke.
Yeah, and it's weird because when you look at Dallas and Washington, I mean, they've got 6 guys that could potentially have a good game. Dallas, on the other hand, I mean, like Rich was talking about, it's Dez, it's Zeke, and I guess you want to throw Dak in there. Rich, who do you like on this Washington side?
Yeah, like I said, I think if you're talking about like building, tournament lineups, it's got to be Reed. I mean, we're talking about legit. Like no one has more multi-touchdown games than Jordan Reed over the past 3 years. That's what he does. I mean, when he scores in bunches, and when he gets hot, in bunches. Like Evan talked about, though. I mean, this offense. It's really a testament to how good Kirk Cousins has become. In reality. Is that he's not leaning on anyone. He's just spreading it around to this, hodgepodge of guys. I mean, Niles Paul even caught like a 25-yard pass in that game last week. They're getting everyone involved. Everyone's kind of stealing from everyone. Chris Thompson is doing what Chris Thompson does. I mean, last week was a more Chris Thompson-like game. Like that was the least fluky Chris Thompson game if there was. He didn't have one of those 60-yard catches. The way he caught the touchdown was schematically – a great play design usage that you'd say, oh, that's why I can keep playing Chris Thompson every week because they're going to use him in that type of fashion. It's not just a 60-yard touchdown. So, I mean, I think you can still keep playing, Chris Thompson if you want, to chase that. I mean, he's fine against those linebackers, in coverage. I think you can play him. But yeah, it's really just Jordan Reed if we're talking tournament upside, and like I said, Dak and Zeke are a great combo always because you just monopolize all the Dallas touchdowns.
All right, let's go on to the bounce backs. And obviously this is a theme that's close to my heart because my internet appears to have bounced back. So I get to be on the call with you guys, which is always nice. Evan, who are your bounce backs for this week?
Andy Dalton.
Yeah, he's going to crush this week. I mean, Andy's so cheap, but what?
I said he is, isn't he, dude?
Yeah, of course he is. Indy can't stop anybody through the air. They're a pass funnel. They give it up to the deep ball. I mean, Dalton doesn't really chuck it, but at the same time, this week he should with A.J. Green out there. I mean, I haven't heard a compelling argument yet to talk me off of the Dalton to AJ Green combination.
No, I'm with you, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Andy Dalton smashes this week. Very, very little doubt in my mind. Andy Dalton is Andy Dalton, and he will always be, not fully what we want, but he crushes uncommon opponents. And the Bengals haven't played the Colts since 2014, and AJ Green is going ham this week. Vontae Davis is in the shadow corner and also only plays on one side and has been horrible this year. And there's only one place really for the ball to go in the Bengals offense, especially when they're not even giving the ball to Joe Mixon in the second half of games. And you know what? I'm not going to say that I'm running back to Joe Mixon this week, because I think that Marvin Lewis is not a squeaky wheel type of coach. And I think that Joe Mixon could actually play less this week. What he said, by the way, was not even bad at all.
No.
If you actually listen to what he said, or just read it on a transcript, he just said that, I was watching Le'Veon Bell on the other side, and I wish that we would do stuff like that, and of course I want the ball.
Yeah.
And then, people spin it into literally for clicks. And this is garbage. People spin it into Joe Mixon being selfish. And Marvin Lewis himself spun it into Joe Mixon being selfish, which is trash, man. That's BS. That's not what Joe Mixon said. You could think what you want about Joe Mixon as a person, but in this particular instance, he did not say anything out of line. He wants the football. I can't imagine, wanting a skill position player on my team who didn't want the football. You don't make it to college football, let alone the NFL, if you don't want the rock as a skill position player. Joe Mixon, what he did was not wrong. However, Marvin Lewis is like a jerk. And I don't consider this a positive for Joe Mixon in the least.
We texted about that actually on Monday night. We were like, "Oh, this is totally going to be a thing where curmudgeon Marv, who's basically now that Jeff Fisher is gone, has highlighted Marvin Lewis as the next coach that we can't fathom still has a job." We both texted about it. We're like, "Yeah, this would be totally a game where he tries to set an example, to Joe Mixon, an unnecessary example."
Watch him be inactive or some bullshit.
I want to go. Hopefully not that far, but I'll still mix him into some tournaments. But I mean, I think that Dalton is the premier play on DK easy. I mean, because we were talking about the yardage bonus. I mean, the Colts have allowed 295 or more passing yards to every quarterback except DeShone Kizer. And in that game, Kizer still had 23 fantasy points. I mean, it's just an ultimate smash spot. They're giving up just tons of deep passes for to pair with AJ Green. 26% of the completions the Colts have gone for 20 or more yards. It's the highest rate in the league. I think that, given Dalton's price on DK, it's going to be hard to come off of him, for cash games. It just really is.
Yeah, and I think for tournaments he's going to end up being popular just because, like we talked about earlier, people
I'm not
really
as
need
into
the
him.
savings.
I'm not totally as into him. Not for tournaments, because I think this game's going to be I think that you're going to get – I mean, we're talking specific game script, but I don't think this game has the back and forth that a lot of games do. I think that it's going to be a game where they do run the ball in the second half a lot, and because Marv will do – he's also the type of dude to ultimately probably try to narratively prove a point, give Jeremy Hill second half carries.
Jeremy Hill breakout game? Crain.
No, I can't do it. I can't do it.
What was
but
that?
I mean,
Jeremy Hill breakout game.
Yeah, great. Just what I want to hear on week 8.
I just think given the ownership, he's probably not a guy. I'm probably gonna not. I'll have probably a decent amount of him in tournaments, but I'll probably be a little bit under just because I think he's such an easy call. But I think there are so many games that have really back and forth potential this week. And my bounce back is a game that we didn't talk about as a game, but I think is another game that I think is going to go over, and it's Carolina Tampa Bay. I think all the Panthers guys are a really great smash spot. The Cam Coaster is going to be on an uphill trajectory this week. I mean, you look at, the Tampa Bay is just getting roasted by quarterbacks. They just allowed Tyrod to rush for over 50 yards. Cam's gone over 50 yards rushing in back-to-back weeks. The other reason why I like the Panthers passing game before I even get to the Tampa Bay defensive side is that Carolina can't run the football at all. They have the worst set of running back production in the league. Panthers backs have now carried 149 times for 419 yards, 2.8 yards per carry. That's without even having time off it. They're last in the football in yardage and yards per carry out of the running back spot. They can't run the football. Ryan Cleel's going to be out again. It's just a game where I'm not on them being able to run the football, even though the Bucs have been a defense we've been targeting on the run. But what we can do is look at that passing game. I mean, they've allowed double-digit PPR points to 13 different wide receivers in 6 games. We know the usage tree is thin in Carolina. It's a spot where Kelvin Benjamin is just egregiously priced, especially in a site like FanDuel, especially because he has scoring upside too. So for him to if you're telling me I get a spot where I think he's got a great floor and his touchdown upside for 6,600, like he's almost that's easy there. Like I'm gonna plug him into as many lineups as I can. And like I said, this is just a really good spot I think to look at the Carolina passing game. In this game in general, I think Mike Evans is a guy that's kind of going to go overlooked this week too, because everyone wants to play AJ Green for good reason as well. But Mike Evans has just been dropping wide receiver 1 weeks after wide receiver 1 weeks through like a really awful schedule, and he's scoring touchdowns. He scored in his past 2 games against Carolina as well, in a game that I think this game is really going to feature a lot more passing than probably the over/under dictates. It's a game I want a lot of exposure to as well.
Hey, he's having a good show, I think.
I wouldn't know. I've barely been here. I spent the first half of the show screaming at my computer, so I don't know, but I believe it. I mean, we've been doing this show for a year and a half now, and Reeves is yet to have a bad show, so I fully get it. All right, let's.
I don't know. I was on Adrian Peterson last week.
Oh, never mind. Well, okay, let's kick him off.
Never mind.
Yeah, we done. No. So let's talk about some running backs. And this is a week where I think it's the running back value is really thin. I've heard a lot of people are already talking about LeGarrette Blount. People are talking about Joe Mixon. They really want Joe Mixon to happen, even though I don't think I'm with you guys. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Evan, who are some of the running backs that you like this week?
I did a show with Matt Friedman the other night. He really talked me into LeGarrette Blount. And LeGarrette Blount is always a dude because most of my action is on FanDuel like a total donkey.
You just like kickers.
I just love kickers. I mean, like that 18 week from Vinatieri, that I was like, yes, I'm right for always having my action on FanDuel.
Yeah, when you have Kai Forbath.
Yeah. Those weeks are glorious.
You're not even alive. You're not even alive if you're not living that life.
Yeah. But LeGarrette Blount is just the ultimate, FanDuel RB. And if he can smash this, which I think because I think I think we are going back to 49ers going to get wrecked every week by rushing offenses, especially with no Eric Armstead. They got crushed at home by a Dallas rushing offense that really hadn't been that good in its first 5 games. Just took a torch to it was to the extent, remember last year we would have games against the 49ers where it would be like 2 running backs in the same game would rip it against the 49ers. Last year, Rod Smith comes off the bench, special teamer, underrated Rod Smith, preseason hero Rod Smith, 8 for 61. The usage is an issue for LeGarrette Blount. He has a horrible floor. I mean, his floor is like 2 points. If he gets like 11 carries for 21 yards, like you're torpedoed, and that's very much within his range of outcomes. You need touchdowns from this dude. But this is like, it doesn't set up better for LeGarrette Blount. He's like a 2-touchdown home favorite against this team that just got ripped apart in run defense at home, and now they're traveling across the country for this road game.
Yeah, and it's the second highest total on the slate. I mean, if you are ever going to use LeGarrette Blount, and I get it if you don't want to, but if you are ever going to use LeGarrette Blount, this is the week.
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much hammered it good. 49ers, they're allowing the 4th most rushing attempts rushing points for fantasy per game, and they're allowing the most receiving points. So it's not even just like one-sided like it was last year where they're just getting bludgeoned on the ground. They're just allowing a smattering of points for everywhere. Kyle Shanahan's already hinted that like he's not going to keep playing vets. He's going to play young guys to see what he has. And we saw that a week ago, and they just acquiesced to Navarro Bowman and just let him leave. I mean, this is a defense that I think is reverting back to last year playing young guys. I mean, Eric Armstead's out, so I mean it's a smash spot for the Eagles. At home. I mean, it's a big, huge total for them. I mean, it's hard to talk yourself out of there. It's one of those things like, if you're just saying, I don't want to play like LeGarrette Blount, I think that's just, kind of missing the point, especially in a week like this where you're chasing, where we want those touchdowns from the running backs. I still think
to be fair, though,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, to be fair, I fully understand the people who want to say, I don't want to play LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah, I do too, honestly. I do too.
Yeah, but we lived this life last year. I mean, we lived it for a long time last year.
Yeah, but we were always on the right side of this, though, Reeves. I mean, we were always on the right side of LeGarrette Blount last year.
I have not been able to drop to Garrett yet this year, so I mean,
yeah,
we have.
I really just love the name. I love the name The Garrett. That's such a great name for anybody, to be honest. Like that's elite level. That is that's Joe Flacco level, real elite, not Joe Flacco elite, I guess. So, who are some of the other running backs that you like?
I mean, we like McCoy. I mean, Oakland, they're allowing 157 total yards per game in the backfields. We're obviously on him. I feel like people are looking for more reasons are ignoring Mark Ingram again, even though he's been the RB2 and the RB7 the past 2 weeks. Again, a similar spot like the Eagles, maybe not as good as a matchup, but you got a 30-point implied total from a team at home, in the Coors Field of the NFL. We're still going to take great credit for that show, even though Evan won't let me have it. But I mean, the Bears are a team that defensively are good. They're good defense, and they are way better up front, than they are against the pass. But I mean, they've been run on as well. I mean, Jerick McKinnon got him just a couple weeks ago. They were able to stop the Ravens and the Panthers the past 2 weeks, but who hasn't stopped the Ravens and the Panthers from rushing? The Packers ran for 92 yards on them that night. Ty Montgomery looked like he was ripping runs before he broke his ribs, and then they kind of just shuttled in guys after that. But Aaron Jones had a good game. And the week before that, Le'Veon Bell had a good all-purpose game against them. So I think people are ignoring, too, that Mark Ingram just isn't a touchdown scorer. He's also comes with a really safe floor, and he fits a lot of lineup constructions as well. I wouldn't be scared to use him.
I wanted to throw in Dion Lewis this week.
Oh, on DK for sure. Even though he's not catching passes, just his pricing.
Yeah, his price. Where is he? Is he below 4,000 or 4,300 or something?
He's 4 even, I believe.
4 even. Okay, yeah. So he is at the same price point as
no, he's 46.
Okay, so slightly above DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard. And I think both of those guys might have high. People hate Patriots running backs. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people just don't get it.
I can't blame them.
No. All right. They obviously whiffed on LeGarrette Blount last year. They obviously whiffed on Dion Lewis when he was a top 5 running back in the first half of the 2015 season. They obviously don't draft James White because every single year he's a top 25 fantasy RB and he's usable every single week. So this narrative that you can't use Patriots running backs is false, number one. I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless you play like in 8 and 10 team leagues and you just need – I mean, what do people think that like there are 25 Le'Veon Bells that get 35 touches each week? Like you have to have –
Yeah, but they all think they're named Joe Mixon.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. I mean, I don't even know what that meant, Crain. But
you would have seen it on my face if you could see the face.
I miss your face.
I miss your face too.
Dion Lewis, though, so the way to attack the Chargers is on the ground. I mean, this is a classic run funnel defense, and I think Dion Lewis can rip this wide open. He's looked great 4 straight weeks now. They've really started to commit to him. Led the backfield in touches last week. Are you going to get 30 touches from him? No. He's got to do it on 13 to 16, which, I mean, I know that's tough for some people to stomach, but that's the reality that we're dealt with when we're looking for, bye week plays and guys that cost $4,600. So I just wanted to mention him in a great matchup, Dion Lewis with the arrow pointing up.
All right, well, let's talk about some wide receivers then. Rich, like we've already talked about AJ Green. I just want to play him on all of my teams. That's the only wide receiver I want to talk about. I like Julio this week too. I'm on Team Julio this week just because I'm just going to keep going down with that ship until he gets in the end zone. Rich, who do you like at wideout this week?
Yeah, I mentioned Mike Evans. I think he's going to be probably under-owned than he should be. I like him. I like Alshon in tournaments. I mean, he's a guy that I just don't think you can trust in cash, even though you want to look at the price and look at the matchup. He's had one top 30 scoring week. That the schedule's been miserable, but he's had 2 spots the last couple weeks where like you'd expect him to do a little better than he has. Just hasn't really got going. They're a team that also is spreading the ball around a little bit. But I still like him. He's got just such a big physical advantage over both 49ers cornerbacks that, I mean, he's a guy that's running 90% of his routes in the boundaries. I mean, Dante Johnson and Rashard Robinson, and we talk about those guys they just can't keep up physically with these types of big receivers. So, I mean, I like looking to him as, a stacking option in the game. I think a lot of people will be on him. And then he's not on the – or he is on the main slate, is Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's in a really good spot. I mean, he last year he had 27 targets in the 2 games versus the Broncos last year. He had over 100 yards in each game. Tight ends have accounted for 34% of the receiving yardage against Denver. That's the second highest rate in the league outside of the Giants. On a week where I don't think people are going to pay up at tight end because Hunter Henry is obviously such a good value this week. And people will be probably looking at Jordan Reed and getting that shootout. I think Travis Kelce's probably going to go overlooked. I think he's a really good option this week too.
Yeah, and Kelce on any site where if you can play Travis Kelce, I would recommend doing it. Evan, who are some of your wide receiver and tight end plays?
I didn't prepare for this segment. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Me either.
Amari Cooper. But we already talked about him, right?
I don't know. I wasn't here.
Oh yeah, did we talk about him? Yeah. Oh yeah. I went through a long diatribe about him. Yeah. Trying to just run down. I mean, I think we hit them all. Honestly, Keenan Allen is a guy I would add to this. I think he's a great play against New England. People have been like telling me in my mentions that the Patriots have a good defense. The people are just bad at this. Their defense is trash.
They're back to the bend but don't break. They're giving up like a ton of yardage. Right. People are looking at the points allowed,
which is fine for fans. I mean, that's great for fans. But when we are like examining the actual strengths and weaknesses of a defense in comparison relative to the rest of the league, the Patriots have a bottom 10 defense at best, and they just lost Dante Hightower for what looks like multiple weeks. So. We want to continue to attack them every single week. I don't care what people on Twitter are saying. Keenan Allen is a great play this week. Hunter Henry, Reeves mentioned him. He's an awesome play. Still just crazy underpriced. I wish that he's had good weeks. But I've been on him like the last 3 weeks. He hasn't had any blow-up weeks when he's been low-owned. I would guess that he starts to become higher-owned, although I think that there's a narrative out there that the Patriots are good against tight ends, so maybe that will continue to lower him.
There's a narrative going around that they're good on defense. So
yeah, right. So,
is that a real thing people are saying?
They look at the points allowed. I mean, the last 3 weeks they're not giving up points, but they're giving up tons of yardage. They're still they're 22nd still in yardage allowed per drive to opponents.
They're going to finish fine in points allowed because they play a bunch of teams that are terrible on offense. And they got to play the Falcons in the fog. And Josh McCown lit them up and Jameis Winston lit them up. And they just didn't give up a lot of points in those games. They can be bend but don't break and be a great team.
Right.
I'm not saying that they're not like a great team. Like they're my Super Bowl pick,
Yeah.
But they don't have a good defense and they haven't had a good defense for over a year.
Yep, I can definitely get behind that. And Dante Hightower, that's a big deal for that defense. That is a big old deal for that
Very
defense. All right. So anything we missed on, or are we good? Because again, I missed the first half of the show because I'm a professional. So anything you guys want to leave us with today?
I don't think I got much else.
Yeah, I got nothing else. Anything for you, Evan?
I don't think so, man. I mean,
All right.
Hopefully some value opens up like later in the week, but right now I'm not very optimistic about
Are
it.
you playing Juju?
Oh, I want
Of course
to.
I'm playing Juju.
I want to. He was
I'm playing Juju.
All right.
Go
So
ahead.
I had a tweet about him today, and it was just like in response to Martavis Bryant, and so Martavis Bryant is essentially not playing this week, right? So I tweeted,
Mhm.
"Oh, it's on for Juju," and then I got like 150 tweets telling me that Juju Smith-Schuster was in the concussion protocol, as if I didn't know that. All right. So then he shows up full practice today. I don't know. This is just me, being my like a clown right here. But Juju Smith-Schuster, he's on track to play on Sunday night, and he is going to not run into Quandre Diggs, the slot corner, because Eli Rogers will be there. So Darius Slay is going to shadow Antonio Brown. Juju Smith is going to get whoever the Lions tried out. It's usually Nevin Lawson at number 2 cornerback. That's going to be a very good matchup for Juju, man.
And he's $300 more on FanDuel than Doxson and 100 more on DK. Is he the pivot?
Ooh.
Yes, he's the pivot. Of course he's the pivot. That's the Sunday night game?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can't get him on DK.
So you can't late swap him. So you can't late swap him.
Yeah, but on FanDuel you absolutely you can't really pivot off. I guess. All right, let's party. Why not? Go Juju. That's what we'll leave you guys with. We'll leave you guys with all the good Juju we possibly can. But we got to get off here. We got to send David home. I know it's pretty late for him. So for Evan, for Rich, I'm Eric Crain. Thank you so much for joining us on Rotoworld DFS Pick 6 on RotoGrinders. We'll see you guys later. Peace.